you for being here with us. And particularly, we also want to thank you, the University Design Institute at Arizona State University, because we have engaged in this special series that we called Designs for Innovation in Higher Education. As you may remember, we had a first session that was called Leaders as Designers of Higher Education with Dr. Michael Crow, the president of Arizona State University. And today we have the pleasure to have to hear Executive Vice President Dr. Olsen with another session that is Resource Diversification and Financial Sustainability. We will, in the near future, have 2 more sessions on the same line for design in higher education. But at this point, I want to say thank you for being here on behalf of IAUP and President of IAUP, Dr. Fernando León Garcia. And I am just about to say that this session is going to feature important aspects on finance with the experts on this area, and I hope this is a very productive one. Moderator is going to be Dr. Bidui, who is the Managing Director and Vice Chair of University Design Institute and advisor to Arizona State University President. Therefore, we are going to start with that. But I would like to also say that if some of you didn't attend or didn't have the opportunity to join the first session with President Crow, we will be happy to pass you the link to the recording in case you want it. You just need to let us know via email, and we will be sharing that as soon as possible. Without any further ado, then, Dr. Minuipe, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Noe. Welcome to all of our participants to this webinar. We are on our end waiting for Dr. Olsen. He may be on his way. We thank you for your patience. We will get off the ground here as soon as he is able to join us. I will introduce him, and then we will get going on both his remarks and then also have the time for us all to have a discussion. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for coming. We will be ready to go in just a few moments.
Yeah, in the meantime, I want to add that this is a collaboration between our institutions. IAUP is always trying to find ways to exchange information, relevant information to presidents for different areas in higher education, trying to prove that it is not only on one part of the world that we take a look at important decisions, but all over the world. So we are very grateful to Arizona State University and to the Design of Higher Education Institute, because with these activities, we continue promoting better practices in our institutions. This is one of the activities that we have for members and non-members of the IAUP, but there are also others that we are open to members only, and there is the opportunity for you to ask if you would like to know what else we have, and we will be pleased to share with you a few of them in the next few days. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, Dr. Olsen. We are glad you are here. We are ready to get underway. To our participants, thank you for your patience. We are delighted to have you all here. Welcome to this webinar. I'll take a moment to quickly introduce Dr. Olsen, and then we'll turn the floor over to him. But before that, I want to thank IAUP. As Noe said, we have had a wonderful partnership, and we are very excited that we can continue to work together and host these dialogues on what needs to happen in higher education. And today we are talking about a very, very important topic, and that is resource diversification and financial sustainability. University leaders around the world are challenged by this topic in different ways. And we have with us one of our senior most leaders, a deeply experienced leader in this area, to give us some ideas on how ASU has navigated the space, but also we can delve into his depth of knowledge as we get into the discussion session. So I'm delighted to introduce to you Dr. Morgan Olsen, who is Executive Vice President, Treasurer, and Chief Financial Officer of Arizona State University. His responsibilities at the university include treasury and financial functions, internal audit, capital projects, real estate, facility operations, information technology, business services, human resources, environmental health and safety, ASU police, and auxiliary services. Dr. Olsen also serves on the boards of the ASU Foundation and ASU Enterprise Partners, and holds an appointment as a professor of practice in the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. He has over 3 decades of experience in higher education and has held multiple leadership positions nationally at various bodies. You have access to his detailed bio. I will not hold up time here, but we are delighted to have you here with us, Dr. Olsen. Before I turn it over to you, a couple of words on how we are going to run the session. We will give Dr. Olsen 20 minutes to make his remarks, at which time we will open it up to a discussion, which I will be happy to moderate. I will invite all of our participants to put your questions in the Q&A as we go along. I will be able to pick up the questions as soon as we get into Q&A. So don't wait until the end. You won't have the chat function, so just make sure you go to the bottom of the page to the Q&A function and start putting your questions in. We will try and get as many of them as we can before we end the webinar today. So again, welcome. And Dr. Olsen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Manu. It's great to be here with you today. And what I wanted to share with the group is how we have designed Arizona State University to really transition our business model and our practices to adjust to the changing environment. And I suspect that change is probably a constant for all of us. I know that there are universities represented from around the world. And so, there are some commonalities, but also importantly, some differences. And so I'll just preface what I'm going to say by saying that, this reflects our reality and our journey. And I hope that some parts of what I say will be relevant to everyone listening, but, clearly individual experiences will differ. And, to the extent possible, I'll try to contextualize, what I'm sharing as we go along here. And so if we could advance the slide here, I think one of the things that I want to talk about here is some of the themes that we've used as we redesigned the university to succeed as our environment has changed. And one of the big things that we have done is to leverage the power of partnership. And by that, I mean that we look to partner with organizations. Some of them are other universities. Some of them are other types of organizations, corporations, NGOs, governments, et cetera. But we seek partners that will, when they work with us, provide some synergy, that we will be able to do things that neither one of us might be able to do unilaterally by ourselves. And some of the benefits to that have been, as you can see here, providing access to new capital sources, equity and debt and revenue sharing, et cetera. We have also attempted to build the university's brand and visibility nationally and increasingly internationally. And some of these partnerships have been absolutely critical to being able to do that. We also have sought to preserve our own debt capacity. This is where we borrow money on the capital markets, usually by issuing bonds. And because we are a large and growing university, this year we have about 80,000 what we would call campus immersion students. Those are students who study on one of our 4 campuses, but then an additional over 60,000 students who study with us through ASU Online, for a total of over 140,000 students. We're a growing institution from the standpoint of our residential living and learning facilities. And so adding capacity for students to live on campus as we grow enrollment is capital intensive. And similarly, we're a fast growing research university. So performing research that is sponsored by third parties, we have to have the laboratories and the equipment and other facilities that are necessary. So there are a lot of demands for capital, and not only to maintain, our existing built infrastructure, but also increasingly to continue to scale. And part of our strategy has been a growth strategy. It has worked thus far quite well, but that growth strategy also means, that there are a lot of demands for capital. And so preserving our debt capacity for the things that are nearest and dearest, to our mission, the teaching and learning process and the research enterprise have been necessary, but we also need capital to do things like build our residence hall or living and learning facility infrastructure as we house more students on our campuses, and to do things like providing power to our facilities. We have over 28 million gross square feet of built environment campus buildings, and heating and cooling those buildings requires a lot of energy. We have a need, and part of our brand identity is that we'll be a highly sustainable institution. I know many of you have similar desires in terms of how you operate your institutions, and energy infrastructure is something, again, that is amenable to partnership. So we've done probably over $1.5 billion US of public-private partnerships for living and learning facilities, and over $500 million toward our energy infrastructure. And just a year ago, we reached carbon neutrality for scope 1 and 2 emissions, everything except for university community related travel. So that was a big milestone for us. And the carbon-free energy sources that we gained access to through public-private partnerships have been a key part of that. And of course, I also have to recognize that in many cases, our partners bring to us expertise that we may not have at the university. So that's another benefit of the power of partnership as we see it. So ASU Enterprise is a term that you may have heard previously, and one that we use regularly here. We have focused as a strategy on operating the university not as a governmental entity. We are a public state university, but we increasingly, in terms of our planning and our operations, rely on our ability to generate our own revenues, whether it's through tuition and fees, or it's through real estate operations, or it's through online learning, or selling, our services and expertise to other entities. It's been about the resources that we can generate, but it's all in service of the ASU charter. And this is an actual picture on one of our buildings here about 6 months ago. The charter is something that we hold so near and dear that we actually chisel it in granite and place it at the entrances to each of our campuses. And as you can see here, we want to be measured not by whom we exclude, but by whom we include and how they succeed. So we're very much interested in expanding access to higher education, not rationing it in a way that might make it available only to those that are deemed the most qualified by certain metrics. that in itself is a resource intensive enterprise. And of course, we also want to apply our knowledge assets, to support our stakeholders. So taking fundamental responsibility for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities that we serve is a fundamental part of what we do. So more specifically, some of the things that we do, here is a slide that reflects a presentation that I made at a professional association meeting this summer, and it followed up on a white paper that the TIAA Institute, kind of a think tank for TIAA that some of you may be familiar with. They sponsor financial services to higher education institutions increasingly around the world. But their institute published a white paper on our strategies surrounding leveraging our real estate assets. And so that's allowed us to generate new revenue streams that have been important to the growth of the university. We have been able both to generate financial returns, but also to identify opportunities to have sort of a double bottom line where we're also benefiting our mission by virtue of some of the programmatic returns on these projects. And as this summary notes, some of these things may well be the types of things that other institutions can use. And so, we have done projects, for example, in terms of providing a 4-star hotel and conference center. We were desperately short of conference center space, to support all the meetings and conferences that a research university typically generates. It was a joint partnership with the city of Tempe, where our oldest and largest campus sits. And so, there were financial aspects to this project, but also it's allowing us to facilitate and expand what we do as an institution, as reflected by our charter. Similarly, we have a lifelong learning facility, which happens to sit right next door to this hotel conference center, that allows us to serve universal learners. That's people outside of the typical post-secondary education age range in a way that allows them to engage with the university. It's learning and cultural entertainment assets to mentor students, participate in research projects, take classes, in some cases teach classes. And so we look for that sort of double bottom line with those types of projects. This next slide shows our mostly forward plans in terms of how we're going to continue to diversify revenue streams to the ASU enterprise. And I won't go into detail, slide's pretty complicated, but I think what you can see here is that we project that due to some of these strategies, we'll be able to continue to grow our revenues and diversify them. So less and less from government support, which is the black bar that you see at the bottom. Today, it often surprises people when we tell them that Arizona State University, that over 90 cents of every dollar that we spend comes from something other than government support. And that proportion has declined. 15 years ago, that number was probably approaching 40% of the total, now down to less than 10%. And that's because we've been able to grow other revenue streams, expanding access to an ASU education to non-resident and international students, increasing grant and contract revenue, of course, charitable gifts. We make significant efforts to do that. In the last few years, have been consistently able to raise over $300 million US annually in new gifts and commitments from a charitable standpoint. We're also expanding the types of things that the university does, for example, through Learning Enterprise, part of the ASU enterprise, where we make available to learners around the world non-credit programs that reflect competencies that increasingly are important to people for them to be successful in their lives and their careers. That may be through an employer relationship where we're working with companies to expand the total reward structure of their companies to include access at no or reduced cost to educational opportunities. And then there are other things as well, or as you can see, but diversifying revenue streams as we grow has been a very important part of our strategy. This next slide shows you what we've been able to do through increased emphasis on what we do with fundraising. We, a little over a year and a half ago, reached the $1 billion US club in terms of our total endowment market value. That's the good news. The challenge for us, of course, remains is that we are using that to support a very large scale operation in terms of how many students we have to support with our endowment. But we are kind of moving up the ranks there, which is important to us as we continue to grow the ASU enterprise. Another area that I would mention in terms of diversifying revenues is that we have been able to, this is an example, some internal reporting that we use to reflect where we are in terms of new gifts and commitments. So some of those go to our endowment, which supports a perpetual revenue stream. We only spend the income from the endowment, but we've also been able to increase what we would call current gifts, which is money that our supporters and investors give us as gifts, but that is available to use for programmatic needs on a current basis. And increasingly, many people find that they want to prioritize maximum impact, in their lifetime, and so current gifts are an important part of what we do. Other examples of our partnership strategies include what we call our innovation zones. Those are physical locations. They're usually next to one of our campuses that allow us to co-locate and collaborate with companies and other organizations around the knowledge assets that the university creates and curates. And so, for example, we might partner with a company that would locate in our innovation zone. These are mixed use developments that have office space, they have residential space, hotels and apartments. And then they are also a place for people to enjoy in their time off. So they include restaurants and recreational facilities, et cetera. So we can kind of address someone's entire time at work and at play. And so we have 7 of these innovation zones. Several of them, for example, our research park in South Tempe is about 300 acres. This is university land that we leased to a corporation that we created, which in turn subleases it. We have over 50 companies employing over 6,000 people in the research park, which has an annual economic impact of about $1.2 billion. We have another innovation zone north of our Tempe campus, Skysong, which has a similar $1 billion annual economic impact. To just give you 2 examples of the way we try to harness our knowledge assets. I mentioned our Omni and Mirabella projects, the hotel and the lifelong learning facility. We also make every effort to leverage a variety of technologies, including educational technologies. So the university and its affiliates are now investors, co-investors with companies that are developing educational technologies, with companies and other organizations that are applying these educational technologies. So we are partners with companies like InStride, which was created to help facilitate that relationship with employers that I mentioned, where access to reduced cost or no cost to the individual education has become part of the total compensation structure. And some of you may also be familiar with Sintana, which is similarly a company that is providing access to ASU knowledge, courseware, technologies, et cetera, to grow their own scale. And these are international institutions located around the world. So that's an example there. Student housing, I've already kind of covered or talked about, and utilities and energy. So a variety of forms of partnership, all of which we believe help us perform well at scale, which is a key strategy for ASU and the ASU enterprise. This is an example of these innovation zones that I was sharing with you. They're around the valley. As I said, there are 7 of them listed here. Each one of them takes a slightly different form depending on where they're located and the focus that we're trying to achieve at each of them. You can see we have one that is related to advancing the biopharmaceutical industry, medical technology, et cetera. So there are a variety of these, including the Arizona Health Solutions Corridor, which is something where we are partnered with the Mayo Clinic, which has been a long time tremendous partner of ours, a great brand, great capacities in the organization, and we think reflecting that power of partnership that we mentioned. So this chart just reflects some of our various partners. Some of them are municipal, like the city of Tempe and the city of Scottsdale and the city of Chandler. Others are private sector, like the Catalyst Development Corporation around our Novus Innovation Corridor, which is 300 acres around the Tempe campus that we're developing. And you can see the projections of economic impact there upon full build out after about 20 years, about $4.5 billion annually, over 30,000 jobs. You can see some of the companies that are already located in the Novus Innovation Corridor, with, we hope, more to come. And we have this master development plan that will take place over time. We're deep in the middle of this. We have about $500 million worth of development that is in place on the third phase of the Novus Innovation Corridor, which sits down in the parcels that are numerated 3, kind of in the lower left of this chart. Several other sectors are already active. And so, as you can see, over time, we will have a fairly urban mixed-use development that sits in the downtown Tempe area, the sort of the second major urban center in Arizona. So we're, in a sense, helping create our own 50 to 100 year neighborhood. This is a conception of how that will look. Ultimately, about a third of the development you see here has already been accomplished, and we anticipate more will come as we reach the full development plans. This is a reflection of our SkySong innovation zone in South Scottsdale, which is mostly built out. We have one parcel left for a 6th building, and again, over $500 million of economic, or rather $1 billion of economic input annually. And we focus on ed tech and startups and student entrepreneurship, and this often serves as a location, a Western U.S. location for companies that are engaged in international commerce, many of them domiciled outside the U.S. So here is a rendering. This building is in existence. This is the a P3, a public-private partnership developed with Wexford Science and Technology, a private for-profit company that specializes in life sciences facilities that have a focus on entrepreneurship and the startup economy in the biomedical space. We have about 7 acres that the city of Phoenix, a public entity, made available to the university because they believed that we could help facilitate this kind of development within part of downtown Phoenix, which is one of their economic development goals. Very quickly, here is a rendering of our Omni Hotel and related conference center, which you can see at the lower right of the rendering here. This will open next April, so we're very excited about this. 30,000 square feet of conference center and 330 guest rooms and a 5-star hotel. This will greatly increase the capacity of Tempe and ASU to host large meetings. There are a couple of other hotels that have been built across the street, all of which we think can be used for that purpose. Right next door to the east of that is an existing project. This project is completed. This is our lifelong learning community, Mirabella, where we have about 300 living units. These are for people who are age 62 and over. Some of them are employed full-time, some of them are part-time, some of them have already retired, but it facilitates our goal of serving the lifelong learner. It's built on ground owned by the university and provides ground lease revenue to the university, and an entity that we created, University Realty, is a development partner in a joint venture with Pacific Retirement Services that will operate this facility for us. And if you were to visit this, I think you would be quite impressed. It is a wonderful place for people to live and to engage with the university community through learning and other activities. You can learn more about this. We'll share these slides with the group, but you can see the URL at the lower left here, which would allow you to learn a great deal more about the Mirabella. And then here's an example of what I was mentioning with respect to leveraging educational technology. So we have our college achievement program with Starbucks. And that, in addition to providing us a great deal of brand recognition, has allowed us to demonstrate to the marketplace what's possible through partnerships. We now have with Starbucks a program where 100% of the cost of tuition for a bachelor's degree at ASU online is covered for participating associates, as Starbucks refers to their employees. You can see we have over 16,000 students employed in or enrolled in that program, growing rapidly, up 17% year over year. We've had now over 1,700 graduates in that program, or rather 1,550 in 21, over 6,400 in total. And we are partnering with Starbucks in other ways. We seek to expand our partnerships over time. So we're doing a lot of work around sustainability with Starbucks. That's important, to the mission of both Starbucks and the university. And so it was a logical way to expand. I mentioned our InStride relationship, which helps us develop partnerships with employing companies. Sintana, that happens to be the CEO of Sintana, Doug Becker, who has deep experience in terms of international education and leads that company that helps provide technology and learning resources to universities around the world. On the right, you see one simple rendering that frankly can't do complete justice to what Dreamscape Learn really is. This is an immersive virtual reality experience that is focused on allowing students to learn through being immersed in a world that has the learning objectives built into it. We are starting in the area of biological sciences, but are intending to scale to many other subjects. And we have multiple learning pods, as they're called, for Dreamscape Learn, located on the Tempe campus, and we're going to put one into our new Mix Center in Mesa City Center. That's part of a digital arts facility that just opened and is really impressive. And I encourage you, if you were to visit us, to come see that and come see Dreamscape Learn. But eventually we want to scale that to even more locations. These are just an example of some of our partners that are involved in this notion of college education as part of the total rewards or compensation structure. You can see Uber and others here, including some of our institutional partners. Uber, for example, is a partnership that we started in 2018, where their drivers or their dependents can enroll in ASU online courses and have the costs fully covered. You see the statistics there in terms of enrollment. And this is something that tends to work very well for entry-level employment opportunities, where people are happy to have the employment, but of course thinking about, what's my potential? How do I develop professionally? How do I aspire to more? How do I support my family even better? And this is a way of social mobility that we are happy to partner with various of our partners to make happen. And InStride is sort of the vehicle that we've established for doing that. At the bottom of the slide, you see some of the other partners: Adidas, Aramark, Banner Health, Carvana, LabCorp. That's a small subset of the number of participating partners, but their employees are all benefiting from the increased access to educational advancement that this partnership provides. Similarly, here's a little information about Sintana that I've mentioned, where we partner with institutions around the country, and that can take various forms depending on what works best in each country and for each institution and their constituents. I would add that, as you can see here, that our plan is to offer these programs in native languages around the world, which makes it, as you can imagine, even more challenging to scale. We have a pretty significant footprint already in China, for example, and those courses largely are in Mandarin, and that will be true, whether it's Spanish in Mexico or other languages, wherever we offer these programs. Got a few more slides here. I won't spend a great deal of time. I think I've already, covered it. These are just some examples of the different types of public-private housing that we have developed at ASU. The observation that I would share with you here is simply that, we started out with typical residence halls, 2 or 3 students to a shared room, but we have pioneered with our partners other approaches. So the first honors college, Barrett Honors College in the country, that was delivered as a P3 public-private partnership. We now are integrating learning facilities right into our living and learning locations. So Fusion on First is an example of that. It's a 16-story tower with, if I recall correctly, around 400 apartments, but it also includes 3 stories of learning space that are focused around the fashion industry, our fashion programs, and our popular music programs. The idea is it's a little bit like a startup where you can kind of live where you work. And if the students want to come down at 3 o'clock in the morning, on Saturday morning and work on their fashion project, they actually can do that. So a new and exciting approach to residence life. Here you see examples of the various partnerships when they were completed of various types over the years. And here are a couple of renderings of the outcomes. Most of these projects have been recognized by construction industry, design industry, various learning organizations in terms of being seen as leading examples of this type of work in higher education. We've got facilities on the upper right on our downtown campus, and the other 3 happen to sit here on our Tempe campus, which is our largest and oldest campus. But we actually have these projects that are delivered in a public-private partnership format on all 4 of our campuses here in the Valley. So similarly with our renewable energy partnerships, we started out doing projects on campus. Of course, some of you may be aware that Greater Phoenix is often referred to as the Valley of the Sun. And if you can't make a solar energy project work in the Valley of the Sun, I don't know where it would. But what we've learned through our journey is that where we started out by having solar panels on top of buildings and then parking structures, and finally creating what we call power parasols, which are sunshades that happen to be solar structures, but also provide shade for people underneath them, which is really welcome in the summers around here. But that the best economics were actually from what we would call grid scale or utility grade solar projects. So for example, we worked with one of our utilities, so one of our public utilities, who built a 400-acre solar farm in between Phoenix and Tucson in southern Arizona. We bought the majority of the power that's generated by that plant, the electricity from solar energy, and PayPal, a private for-profit company that has similar sustainability objectives, bought the rest, which really helped us in terms of getting toward carbon neutrality. But more recently, we've done other types of innovative partnerships, such as a virtual power purchase agreement, where we purchased a large amount of energy that was developed from wind. Now, the wind isn't reliable enough here in Arizona, so this Armadillo Flats wind farm actually sits in Oklahoma. We purchased that and we retain the environmental attributes from the wind energy and then sell into the grid the actual power, since it can't be delivered here. But that, again, helps us with our goals of achieving net zero carbon on our energy infrastructure. Here's an example of one of those power parasols. Lest you don't make it to Arizona to visit, here's what 400 acres of solar panels actually looks like. In summation, we've tried to diversify our revenue streams. We've done things that many would say, well, gosh, why is a university doing that? We have done many of these things because it helped us, realize our charter. We believe that we have a responsibility to the communities that we serve. And in order to scale the way that we needed to do that, knowing that government investment is by definition limited, we needed to find additional partners and investors to help us do that. So I hope some of this has been helpful to you. And at this point, Manu, I would be happy to have questions that the audience might have listening to all this.
Morgan, thank you. That was an incredible amount of information, and I appreciate the details. To our participants, we'll make sure that the material that Dr. Olsen presented is available to you. This will also, the recording will also be available to the broader IAUP community. We recognize that not everybody can make it to a webinar at a particular point of time. I know we are close to being at time, but here's the question, Morgan, that keeps coming up as we engage with different groups. If you are a relatively small public university, and you want to start thinking about public-private partnerships and engagement, where would you start? What kind of capacity do you need to build on your team to be able to do some of the things that you've talked about? Our model is a very mature model, but what advice would you have for your colleagues who are starting out on this journey?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. You're right, that a lot of these things are contingent and everybody has a slightly different situation. And so, not everything I've suggested for a rather large public research university in the United States will make sense for the entire group. But there are probably aspects of these that are applicable. And in our case, for example, we had a significant amount of land that we weren't utilizing. Was actually a cost to the university. And so in part, some of our innovations districts grew up out of that observation that, gosh, here's something that we're not using. It's an asset or could be an asset if we think about it differently. And so I think, that kind of thinking is what's necessary here. And then you have to look at your own circumstances. I would say that, part of our journey has been, we've been able to sort of institutionalize these things over time. So, we do a lot in what in the US, at least, people would consider to be the world of commercial real estate. Developing and monetizing real estate assets beyond what's necessary for the direct operations of the university to generate a revenue stream. And when we started out, our partnerships included working with consultants who had expertise in some of these areas. As time has gone on and it proved to be a promising activity for the university, we've acquired the resources, the assets, the people, frankly, with expertise and know-how and experience that now work for the university or one of our affiliates, so that we can sort of do this on a regular basis. But there are whether it's for example, a company like Centana or other partners that are out there, Centana being in the learning space, there are organizations out there whose business model revolves around serving customers, partnering with other entities, educational institutions in this case, that can kind of help you get started and get a leg up. And you can try it. It's kind of the scientific model. You do an experiment, see whether it works, and then iterate and optimize from there. That can help people kind of get started with some of these initiatives.
Morgan, we do have a question. I know we are at time, but I also recognize that we got off a few moments late to the group. So I do want to take this question from Juan Camillo. He says, how do you select and find the right partners? That is a wonderful question.
I'm inclined to say by selecting some of the wrong ones first and learning from it, but that's a little painful. I think, that one of the things about higher education, and this group, frankly, is an example of it, is that unlike a lot of industries, we compete with each other in ways, but we also collaborate. In fact, I've sometimes used the term co-opetition, in English to sort of reflect that. So we share information in a way that maybe Ford and General Motors, two global U.S. automobile manufacturing firms, absolutely wouldn't. In fact, if you're at Ford and you were helping GM, you'd probably get fired. In our industry, generally we do share information, we do help each other, and one of the best sources of information that I've seen has been to talk with colleagues at other institutions that you think are somewhat similar to you, but also maybe are ahead of you in a particular area and have expertise. And I've found almost always that people at other higher education institutions are in fact willing to share what they've learned and to help you along the way. And so for me, that's been a really good source of information to kind of get up to speed much more quickly than I'd otherwise be able to do.
So seek advice, be ready to make mistakes, bring expertise from outside until you acquire that expertise internally, and then just stay consistent with the values of the organization or the university that you're leading. So much great information packed into this webinar, Morgan. Thank you. We will share these details with IAUP, who will then share it with their broader community of global university leaders. We thank IAUP for your partnership. We thank you, all of our attendees, for being here today. And Dr. Olsen, thank you for taking time from your very busy schedule to be here and share some words of wisdom with us.
Well, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. And obviously, if we can be of further help, through Manu, who, by the way, wonderful summary, happy to do that. So thank you for allowing me to be with you today. Thank
you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And also, just to remind you that the recording is going to be available in the email address that you used to register for the seminar, for the webinar. Thank you, Dr. Olsen. Very, very insightful information indeed. Thank you, Minnie, for your help. And we look forward to the next session that we're going to have in a few weeks. Thank you, everyone.